Hello students, welcome to Movishala, and in this class is very crucial and this is very important in the exam of your UPSC. So this class is basically for reading comprehension, as we are all aware about what exactly reading comprehension is. Reading comprehension is containing almost 28 to 29 questions is usually asked in the previous year. So you have to understand what exactly the weightage of reading comprehension in your exams. So guys, very good afternoon to everyone, and I hope that you guys are very waiting for this class. So in this class we have to understand that what exactly the strategy to solving the questions. So first we have to understand the strategy, then we will discuss about the previous year questions, so that we will get to know that how exactly the way to solve the questions as well. So my name is Ashish Bhargav. So we will start the class now. Okay, so in the first class we have to understand that what exactly the nitty-gritty of the subject. So in the reading comprehension portion, if we talk about, like, here is reading comprehension in 2021. There were around 27 questions that is based on reading comprehension, and quant there were 35 questions, and the logical reasoning and decision making there were 17 questions. So if you talk about 27 questions, each questions contain 2.5 marks in your exam. So basically you have to understand, if you are good enough to solve the reading comprehension portion, so you will exactly crack the CSAT, which is requires the 33% weightage, right? And 2020 there was around 25 questions. 2019 there was 30 questions. 18 there was 26 questions. 2017 there was 30 questions. 2016 there were 27 questions. 2015 there was 30 questions. 2014 there was 32 questions. So basically, on an average, if you look at very carefully, because you are aware about in 2014 there was syllabus was changed by the UPSC. So 2014 till 2021, so there was around more than 25 questions has to be asked. So basically, if you multiply into 25 into 2.5 marks, so you will, if you are good enough to solve the reading comprehension portion, you will exactly crack the 33% weightage which is required to pass in CSAT exam, right? So basically, and maths portion and logical reasoning, that another sir will take your class. So in reading comprehension, first we have to understand, now you got to know that there were 27 questions in this year, and probably there was a chance that in 2020 there was around 20 till 30 questions will asked in your exam. So basically, in reading comprehension portion, there are lots of types of reading comprehension portion. Like for example, like some passages were fiction based, some passages were non-fiction based, some passages were like, the passage was based on economy topic, political topics. So you have to understand either or not if you are not aware about that particular subject, because some passages are directly extract from the Hindu, Economist Times, different newspaper and magazines as well. So that newspaper and magazines, it is not possible to cover all the newspaper in a day, because for the aspirants that they are just reading the newspaper just for the sake of current affairs. But for the reading comprehension portion, we have to understand that which portion is important, right? So further moving, here it is. So this passage was exactly asked in 2020. So as we can see, the question was asked was best implied, and the second one is here, following assumptions have been made. So basically the questions is not exactly like kind of SSC and banking exams. This is something different. It is about like there was a one passage is over there, because see, we have to understand before to fight any exam, what is the nature of the exams, right? So this basically there was a passage, and above the passage there was around, if you talk about like around 8 to 9 stanza is there, and one passage there were only one questions. Hardly they will ask the one passage and two questions. So we have to exactly understand what exactly the way why they are asking around 28 passages and 28 questions. Because the reason behind, earlier before 2014, so there was a questions on reading comprehension, and if the students are able to read the reading comprehension portion, and after that there was around 4 to 5 questions based on that. So on an average there were around 50 marks, 50 minutes. One student who is very well enough to read the passage, read between the lines, they are able to solve the questions. But now this, you have to change the strategy, because the lots of students who get in GS paper 1 who got 120 plus marks, which is not the cutoff. Cutoff is almost 110 or 105 or below 100. But they are failed in CSAT exam. The reason behind, they are good in reading skills, but they are bad at comprehending the skills. Reading comprehension, which means the word comprehension is taken from the word comprehend, which means that how much you are able to comprehend the subject, what exactly the subject is talking about. Sometimes there was a hidden meaning in this passage, so you have to be reveal it out, how you will gain the benefit to reading the. For example, if there is a one is in India, over the last decade or so, in labor has been depurating agriculture but only going to construction, whatever the passage is talking about. So you have to be basically understand what exactly passage is talking about. I will tell you what exactly you need to do to make it the passage very shortly. So first we have to understand which one is the following in the best implied in the passage. So best implied, which means that all the 4 possible answer could be like A, B, C and D. But among these you have to be understand like A, B, C and D, what exactly the best implied in the passage, because 4 possible way, because the answer would be like A also, B also, C also and D also. Once we read it very carefully, the passage A, B, C and D, you got to know, oh, I think all the option is like suitable for the answer. But you have to understand the best part of this exam, answer is in your eye, in front of your eye, and you will easily understand that this is very best way to solve the reading comprehension questions. Now, for example, like here is the following assumptions have been made. So the best implied and the assumption. There were 2 types of questions you used to ask in your exam. So basically you have to be understand like how exactly the way should be to solve the questions. Right. So first example, for example, now we have to understand. See, first one is here assumptions and interference. See, this is the basic class, so you have to be understand first the strategy how you will solve the passage. Until unless you will not understand the how you will solve the passage, the time when you will solve the exact passage which have been asked earlier in the UPSC exam, you will have lots of confusion to solve the passages. So make sure that here is the assumptions and interference. So how you will deal with such kind of questions where we talk about assumptions and interference. So whenever you are asked the questions assumption interference from the passage, you should prepare a very small table. See, you have questions, so in exam there are lots of pressure for a student to within 2 hours you have to solve maths also, reasoning also. See, if you will got more than 120 marks or more than 150 marks, how you will get the benefit? What I am trying to tell that, so if you got 150 plus marks, so will the UPSC will consider you as will the UPSC will give you a gold medal for this? No, it requires only 33% marks to just crack it, right? So try to focus as maximum as you can do this. So basically the first I will tell you what exactly the how you will solve such kind of passages. Then you need to do it practice at home. Do not try to solve the passage very quickly. Initially you have to be understand. See, there were 2 type of person. The one who want to ride a bicycle or want to ride a bike. So first things what exactly you need to do. Only just for the saying a person who is riding a bike, for 1 hour if I am seeing a person who is just riding a bike, can I learn the driving skills? Not exactly, right? So if you want to be a good swimmer, you have to be first understand, you have to be remove the fear from the water first, right? So it means the person should be not a hydrophobia, right? I hope you understand what exactly I am trying to say. So basically you need to understand the passage is basically is talking about not exactly your reading skills. It is talking about your comprehension skills. Comprehension skills, which means that how much you comprehend the subject. So basically containing keywords, short codes, summary only. So you have to be note that you don't need to just fill up some keywords which has to be used in the passages, and then data as per the situations. Every passage follow this pattern. So read it very carefully, listen very carefully. First assumptions, and then passage which requires body, and then text and pros and cons. So this is what you need to understand. Now you're not required to do the things. So what I told you, that if you want to ride a bicycle or want to ride a bike, you have to be first understand how to ride a bike. You have to be sit over there, and then second step you need to change the gear, and then third one that you need to be slowly just move it on, right? In the first day you will not like speed up like up to 80 or 100, right? So basically first you need to understand in the type of assumption passages, you need to understand the passage first, and any passages which requires a body conclusion, right? The first one like intro, and then body, and then conclusion, which is required the IBC. So in the intro portion you will got to know that what exactly we are going to discuss, and the body portions we got to know that what exactly is author is trying to convey, and the third one, that conclusion portion, we have to be understand that what exactly the passage is talking about, what we have discussed it earlier, what is trying to convey it. So this is, you have to be keep in mind that IBC, which means intro, body and conclusion. So you didn't mind that what passage is talking about. Once you read the body portion, you have to be understand that what we have discussed in the intro portion, because sometimes the topic is like any author is talking about the poverty and goes into like the reason behind the poverty, like lack of education, and then they talk about like malnutrition, and then they talk about like child stunting. So they are just, author is trying to interlinking the lots of topics. So we have to be understand not poverty is not the main subject is here, right? So you have to be understand the main keywords which you are very earlier familiar with, or if you are not familiar with, then you have to be got to know that if you have to be build up or cultivate the test of like the reading the passages, right? So reading and comprehending, they both are two different things. Always keep in mind, reading and comprehending. Sometimes we are able to read the entire newspaper, but after reading we will not get to understand what exactly passage has been discussed. So once we read it carefully, so you have to read between the lines, so what exactly the author is trying to convey, and then you need to understand that what exactly we need to comprehend according to the passage has been discussed earlier. So reading is another thing and comprehending is another thing. So first we have to read it very carefully, take proper time, almost 2 to 3 minutes initially, then to read, only just need to read it, and then you need to solve what the passage is talking about. Sometimes like the students who is very novice in this, they like solving the passages, like the SSC, banking, and lots of exam has been asked. So the most of the teachers, they are talking about like first you have to read the options, and then you need to solve the passages. This trick will work only in the like one day exam like SSC and banking. This will not work in the UPSC because there is something different. So we have to be understand first the what exam it requires and what exactly we are doing. The both are two different things. So basically passage is here and then comprehension is here. Now, so what exactly you need to do? Okay, so here is, you need to understand first okay, here is body portion. Here you need to understand pros and cons. It means that the main portion you have to be understand it first, like 1, 2 and 3. So main portion, like for example, is here 1, 2 and 3, like what exactly you have extracted from the passages, that would be very important. So 1 and 2 here is pros and here is cons. We will exactly get to know how you will use this chart to solve the questions. Now, see, now here is assumptions. Assumptions is that something different. So assumption is like they are above the table, like therefore given in the passages explicitly, but the passage based on them assumptions. If the assumption is taken away, the whole passage argument case will collapse. Interference, implication, and conclusion. Make sure if the assumptions is taken away, the whole passage or argument or case will collapse, or interference, implications, or conclusion. Now we have to understand. I will give you the exactly passes. Take your time to read it. GDP and nuclear power. So take your time, almost one minute to just read and to understand. 1.5 minutes. Okay. So passage basically GDP and nuclear power. GDP and nuclear power. So GDP of a country depends among other things on ready availability of electricity. Nuclear energy has played an immense role in the rise of manufacturing industries in France and Russia. Recently, RBI lowered India's growth forecast from 6.5 to 5.7%. RPM must immediately clear the apprehension and fear among people regarding the use of nuclear power. I have understand that most of the students are familiar with the English language, but I have seen that most of the students are just talking in about the Hindi meaning of the particular one, and they are trying to solve the questions. For example, here I am just translating it to the in Hindi, like here is the main passage here, GDP and nuclear power. So basically it's gross domestic product. I think you are familiar with the economy topic. So GDP किसी भी देश की जो होती है वो डिपेंड किसके ऊपर करती है, among their other things like on ready availability of electricity. So is that truly means that कि GDP किसी भी country की electricity के ऊपर डिपेंड करती है? Not exactly true. Nuclear energy has played an immense role in the rise of manufacturing industry. Now passes को जो स्टार्ट किया हमने जीडीपी से स्टार्ट किया. Do not try to do these things like कि आप इंग्लिश को हिंदी में ट्रांसलेट करो फिर उसको ट्राई टू करो सॉल्व करने के लिए. Most of the students are doing it. First thing, एक पैसेज को सॉल्व करने के लिए you have to be almost 2 minutes, right? And पहले इसको इंग्लिश को हम हिंदी करेंगे तो 2 से 2.5 मिनट हमें इसके लिए चाहिए होगा. 2:30 minutes we have just wasting it. And then solving the questions, and again the questions होंगे इंग्लिश में, उसे आप फिर से हिंदी में कर रहे हो. And from my point of view, you are just wasting the time. So it's the best part is that in your main exam there was a Hindi and English is there. If you are a Hindi medium student, just solve that particular passage. Not try to solve like Hindi and English. Sometimes like there was some typical words is asked in the Hindi, so just jump into the English section. You will got to know. So basically GDP of a country depends among other things on ready availability of electricity. Nuclear energy has played an immense role in the rise of manufacturing industries. So basically passage talking about in any country GDP has playing a vital role, and for this we must have electricity. Why we need electricity? Just for the sake of nuclear energy we required. Has played an immense role in the rise of manufacturing industry. So if we boost up the manufacturing industry, like in France and Russia are doing it. Recently, Reserve Bank of India lowered India's growth forecast from 6.5 to 7%. RPM must immediately clear that apprehension. Apprehension, which means there was some kind of speculations. So apprehension and fear among people regarding the use of nuclear power. So basically, PM wanted to be like people are not must be aware about the what exactly nuclear power and how the country will grow it up. So basically this is the passage. Now what exactly you need to do? What should be the tricks to solve the questions? So further moving. Okay. So first rule is that you have to remove the garbage. Garbage, which means GDP of a country depends among other things on ready availability of electricity. This is not required. Nuclear energy has played an immense role in the rise of manufacturing industry. France and Russia are doing it. Recently, RBI lowered India's growth forecast. This is not data not required. Then why the UPSC is asking such kind of data? Just for the diversion of your mind, so that you will just indulge, oh, aisa 6.27% हमें ये भी read करना है. So are you sure that they will ask the questions that easily, like the forecast from 6.5 to 7%, 5.7%, students will easily solve the questions. So there was some kind of trap. So RPM must immediately clear, there was not needed. Now rule first, make the table, which we have done it earlier. We need nuclear power. I have just used the short form. You can do it for in your exam to save your time. We need nuclear power for GDP. Body is here. GDP depends on easy electricity. What is the main passage talking about in body portion? And then RBI lowered GDP forecast. This is what exactly you required for this. So first is just like we need nuclear power for GDP. Second, the body portion is that GDP required depends on easy electricity. RBI lowered GDP forecast. Now we have made the table earlier like pros and cons. So pros is that here is pro and here is con. Is France, Russia grow thanks to nuclear power, and some Indian people fear about power. So here is cons, which means that negative points you have to be discussed about here, and the positive part is here like France, Russia grow thanks to nuclear power is here. So what exactly pros is here, like different countries doing this, like France and Russia growing thanks to nuclear power, and cons is that like some Indian people fear nuclear power. So now body is that GDP depends on easy electricity, which is mentioned in the first portion. So GDP of a country which is not required, GDP depends, like among other things, on availability of electricity, and then RBI lowered GDP forecast. How much it has done is not required, right? Now, so here it is. Now here how you will tackle the assumptions questions. Assumptions, which means based on given passes, which are the following is the valid assumptions. So now the passage you have read about, what exactly the passage is talking about. Now the assumption is that based on given passes, which are the following is the valid assumptions. Sometimes the passage is quite similar to GMAT and GRE questions. GMAT is like, for example, like if you wish to do management or MBA from the out of the India, so you have to be first, what you need to do? You have to first like crack the exam like GMAT. So now based on given passes, which are the following is the valid assumptions. First one is use of nuclear power will lead to improvement in the IIP and GDP of India. First. Second one, people are worried about the safety of nuclear plants. Third one, there is a gap between supply and demand of electricity in India. So here's the word valid assumptions. Such kind of passages you will easily find it out like GMAT and GRE exam. Now, what exactly the approach should be? You can see all of the given answer choice seems logically valid according to the given passes, but which of them is the assumptions? Assumption, which means that there is such kind of apprehension that could be the answer. We already saw that passes are based on assumption. And if assumption is taking out the equation, whole thing will collapse. We have already discussed this one. If the assumption is taking it out, whole thing will collapse. So try to visualize it as a courtroom drama. The author is a criminal and you are the public prosecutor. It means PP. It means you are just kind of lawyer. The author is a criminal. So you have to find it out. You must give an argument that will completely destroy this entire premise or case. Thus, the negative of your argument will be the assumptions. Right? So, first what you need to do understand, like, for example, there was a person whose body is wet. What kind of assumption you can take it out? Might be there was a rainfall outside. Second thing, like someone might be poured water into it. Third one could be possible, like there was a festival of Holi, could be the possible reason. There are lots of assumptions could be possible. Fourth one is that the person might be have done bath. Fifth one could be anything. But what exactly should be the assumption through this that we can easily remove all these? So basically, in that case, what you need to do, now through this we have to check it out. So which that the time where it would happened. Like for example, if these things happened in, for example, in the month of July, do you believe that there was a Holi festival? No. It is possible that the person has bathed, but here is might someone poured? That could not be the answer. Rainfall, yes, in the July, the time of monsoon, only the two possible answer could be here, rainfall or bath. The best possible is that rainfall, because in the June and July that there was a monsoon in India, right? So basically we can say before the time frame we are sure about, like there was a lots of assumption is there. Now, but if you are carefully observe the questions, like when it what happened, so there was a time of, if I talk about July, so there was in July there was four options here. Holi could not be possible because in the month of July we are not celebrating Holi, right? Holi festival is basically in the month of Feb or March. Okay, now, so there are the three options. How you will deal this one? Okay. Now here is a chart that we have earlier prepared it. So given answer choice, use of nuclear power will lead to improvement in IIP and GDP of India. See, negative point is here. The negative of this statement, nuclear power will not lead to improvement in the IIP or GDP, but this is just a filler dialogue. It does not totally ruin others' case. So this answer choice is wrong. Move to the next one. Got to know? Here is use of nuclear power. Here is the option in this. If we look at, we have just mentioned, I have mentioned here the options. See, A, B, C, there are three options is here. So I have just mentioned here option, how you will deal with the options. Okay. Now, use of nuclear power will lead to improvement in IIP and GDP of India. Negative statement, you have to think it out. Nuclear power will not lead to improvement in IIP or GDP, but this is just a filler dialogue. It does not totally ruin others' case, so this answer choice is wrong. So nuclear power will not lead to the improvement of GDP, right? Because nuclear power is like improving for the defense sector, not for the GDP of our country, for any country if you're talking about. Second one is that people are worried about the safety of nuclear plants. Is the B option mentioning here. So people trust that nuclear plants are safe. Yeah, but this statement does not help the destroy other passes or case or argument. So this answer choice is also wrong. Because people are worried about safety of nuclear plants. This is agree. But you have to understand this statement does not help us to destroy other passes or argument which we have discussed in the passes to improving the GDP. So this could not be possible. Now, there is a gap in supply and demand of electricity. So, the negative of the statement, there is a no gap between supply and demand of electricity in India. Or in other words, electricity is easily available in India. If electricity is available easily, then lowering of GDP forecast by RBI is not due to the short supply of electricity. I hope this is you understand now. Here's the option is that there is a gap in supply and demand of electricity. Obviously, there is supply and demand gap. Here is the supply, here is the demand. So there is a gap in this. Now the statement negative is that if there is a gap supply and demand of electricity in India, so electricity is easily available in India. So if the electricity is easily available, so there should be lowering of GDP forecast by the RBI. So and therefore PM does not need to create awareness about nuclear power. Now this totally destroy the whole premises or case presented by the author. We're letting you know in the Hindi also. The third option is that it has mentioned कि gap है supply और demand के बीच में जो gap है उसे हमें fill करना है, right? So statement इसका negative statement क्या हो सकता है? For example, like there is no gap between supply and demand of electricity in India. And we can say electricity is easily available in every households. So in that case, if the electricity is available easily, then lowering of GDP forecast by RBI is not due to the short supply of electricity. Because and then that PM does not require to the aware to the people. So in that case, we not need to do this. So it destroy the whole premises are presented by the author. So इसने क्या किया? अगर सपोज करो ये थी यहाँ पे short supply थी यहाँ पे gap और supply के बीच में, and the PM required the people should be aware. In that case, this one is the easily available. Electricity is easily available. Then why PM is to be aware to the people of the country? So C would be the right answer. So in that the case of assumptions, because almost 10 to 12 passages will every year in UPSC comprehension, there was a kind of which one is the assumption question. Assumption, which means that what author is trying to convey it in that manner. So you have to be understand. See, to like catch the hold, you have to think about like a thief. So चोर को पकड़ने के लिए चोर वाली थिंकिंग चाहिए. सिमिलरली जो ऑथर ने मैं पैसेज दिया था उसमें उनकी क्या एजम्पशंस थी, हमें उसे एजम्पशंस कैसे करना है इस चार्ट को बना के वी हैव टू बी थिंक इट आउट व्हिच वन कुड बी द बेस्ट पॉसिबल आंसर. हियर आई एम जस्ट showing you what exactly the questions, and here it was the questions. So based on the given passes, which of the following is the valid assumptions? So all three is the possible answer, but we have to be understand which one could be the valid answer. First one, nuclear power will lead to improvement in IIP and GDP of India, which we have incorrect one if you think it in the particular case. Second one, that people are worried about the safety of nuclear plants, which could not be the possible answer, because the reason behind the people are worried about the safety of nuclear power plants, which is not the right answer in that segment. Third one, there is a gap between supply and demand of electricity in India. So in that case, we have to be understand, yes, this could be the best possible and valid assumptions that we have discussed it. Now further moving, here it is. Now how you will find it out the assumption questions. Assumption, which means that what can be inferred from the passes. India largely depend on thermal power plants for the electricity generation. Second one, people are worried about the safety of nuclear power plants. Use of nuclear power will help improve India's GDP. Assumption questions, we have to be think it out like which could be the possible way to the answer. And the case of interference, we have to understand like what exactly the passage is talking about. So the process would be same, like tables remains the same. The gist is that we need to nuclear power of GDP. So body will be GDP depends on easy electricity. RBI lowered GDP forecast. Pros is you have to find it out in the passes. France, Russia grow thanks to nuclear power, and consider some which means that the passes the author is talking about like some people in our country, right? So some like Indian people fear nuclear power. Now assumption is that above the table and interference is below the table. Meaning interference is derived from the given statement or case. So always keep in mind the assumption is that above the table and interference is below the table. Interference is derived from the given statement or case. So interference should stay close to the table. What we have discussed in the passes. Now we have to be understand first the passes. Here it is. So once again you need to read it first, like GDP of a country depends, GDP depends on what? GDP depends on, among the other things, GDP depend on a country depends among the things on ready availability of electricity. So basically the author is trying to convey the GDP depends on availability of electricity. So once you read it very carefully, the passages, you need to understand, you need to just click it out and make a marker or pen so that you can just underline all the things which you are capable to read in mind. Second one, nuclear energy has played an immense role in the rise of manufacturing industry. Nuclear energy and manufacturing industry, that's it. France and Russia. RBI lowered India growth. This one it required. PM immediately cleared the apprehension and fear among people regarding the use of nuclear power. This is what the passage is talking about. Now further moving, so here it is an interference. Now here let's check it. So we have to be understand first. Okay. So India largely depends on thermal power plants for the electricity generation. While this may be true as per our general knowledge, but this is not given in the passage. So we have to be understand sometimes the passage which we have underlined in that particular passage, we have to understand that if the author is and passage is not talking about the particular subject, then we do not need to choose that particular options. Here the option is India largely depends on thermal power plants for the electricity generation. Now this may be true as per general knowledge, but not try to indulge your knowledge to understand. Okay, so we have understand that we have discussed about, we got to know this is true. But if this question is asked in the GS paper, which is general studies, but this is a reading comprehension, so author is trying to convey that India largely depends on thermal power plants for the electricity generation. This is true, but this is not explicitly mentioned in the passage. So in that scenario, what you need to do it. So this is not given in the passage and the table. Interference must close to the table. This always keep in mind. The table we have make it earlier. So interference must be derived from the table. So this is not a valid interference. Option B. People are worried about the safety of nuclear plants. This is mere restatement of what it said already in the passage. Not good as an interference. So this is a repeating the passage which we have discussed it. So this could not be the possible answer. Third one, use of nuclear power will help improve India's GDP. This is the right answer because it follows the table. GDP requires easy electricity. GDP requires easy electricity, which we have discussed in the passage, and this is what exactly in the C portion it has asked. Use of nuclear power will improve India's GDP. It is not explicitly mentioned in the India's GDP, but if you talk about like countries' GDP, we have discussed. Like France, Russia grew because of nuclear plants. Therefore, use of nuclear power will help improve India's GDP as well. So now we got to understand like the questions of assumptions and interference. The both are different things because in the UPSC there's a lots of questions that are based on assumptions and interference and best implied. There were three kind of questions he usually asked. If you talk about in 2021, there was around 29 questions that is based on reading comprehension. In between that, there was a questions of assumptions. Assumptions questions was around 12 questions were based on assumptions. Interference, there was a questions of 10. And the remaining questions like this based on best implied in the passes. So this is something different like in the exam like SSC and banking, there was a questions directly based on like fiction based passes. Like there was a passes like the Gandhi was born in the particular place, blah 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 is over there. And based on that you have to understand where was Gandhi born. But this is the way to asking questions in the SSC and banking. This is not in the UPSC. You have to be easily understand the passage is something different, the way of asking. There was a kind of question like assumptions, interference and best. But not do this like some students are doing like kind of question like they are solving the question that is based on CAT exam. So this is not require such kind of engineering knowledge or medical knowledge it requires. Sometimes if you are familiar with the topic, but if you read it very carefully, if you are good at reading the skills and you are just comprehending the skills, you are understanding the skills, you will be easily solve the questions as well. So now you got to know that assumptions, interference and best implies that there are only three types of questions you used to be asked. And these days, like as we can say, CSAT exam is very crucial because most of the students who just cracked 120 plus in the GS paper 1, but not able to solve the around 30 or 33%, which is around 82 marks in the CSAT exam. So basically, now you got to know how should be the strategy. Now we will solve exactly the questions that is basically asked in your exam. So guys, we'll discuss the next question that will be in 2020. Okay. So now students, we have discussed about the strategy, about the how to solve the questions. Now we have to understand what are the sources of the passages where it has been taken it out. So here is the passage. So you have to be easy to understand that how the passage is asking in your exam, so that you will got to know that how you need to prepare it. First is here is asset allocation is the most important investment decision we will ever make. There were passages going on, but this passage is taking it from Economic Times. So I have mentioned the link it over here so that you can click it out and reach over there where it has been extracted. Second one is that many people understand the passage was here. The second passage is taking from the Indian Express article. So for example, there was a questions in 2020, but this articles is taking it from like 2018, sometime 2019. So there is not explicitly mentioned like it must be like from the Hindu only, the Indian Express only. It's a mixer format, as we can see, like here the third passage is part third of the constitutions, and this is taking it from the Indian Express article. Here is taking it from the Hindu article. So basically some articles is not usually important in the perspective of mains exam, but they will ask in exam in the reading comprehension portion. While further moving, as you can see, fifth one passage, sixth, seventh, eighth, most of the passage sources is from the Indian Express. Tenth one passage from like this one is also from the Hindu. So the mixture of Economics Times, the Hindu and Indian Express, Times of India, one article is also from the Times of India. Financial Express is also, 15 one is the Hindu. And EPW, that is a passage is from the EPW. And the most of the sociology option students is reading it out. And the fourth passages is here that we could not find the direct sources. So almost out of 20 questions, 20 passages, there were around 60 passages is sources of, most of the passages is from the Indian Express, the Hindu, and as well as Economics Times and Financial Express as well. While the four passages could not find direct sources, most are taken from the editorial opinion sections. So that's why you have to be aware about sometimes the editorial option is not so much important in the perspective of mains and prelims exam, but that kind of passages were very familiar. You have to be very familiar and read it out so that you will get to know that how the passage is asking in the exam.